Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on Clemson at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for joining me. We got a great show planned for you guys tonight. Obviously, we're going to be kicking off the show with recruiting. Got some big news to talk about, some exciting things going on in Tiger Town. But that's not it. We're going to talk about the Bill Belichick, Dabo Sweeney interview. And then we're going to end the show with, is Clemson a lock to win the ACC this year? All of that and more coming up in tonight's episode. But before we get into tonight's show, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Help us get to 6,000 subscribers. We appreciate your help with that. Also, hit that like button. Share the video with all of your college football friends and family members, whoever likes to consume college football content. Share the video with them. Hit that like button while you're in here on this live video. Helps us out, especially on the live shows. And then last but certainly not least, we got two things. We got channel memberships available for you guys. So if you want to support the show in that way, click on join and you can become a channel member right here on Clemson at the Voice of College Football. And then we got the super chat feature throughout the show. If you would like to support the show in that way, click that super chat feature and we'll be sure to read and respond to your comment and or question attached to that super chat. And with that said, and without further ado, I'm going to bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Good, man. Dealing with some technical difficulties, so I'm joining in on my phone. So y'all are just gonna have to bear with me. But other than that, it's been a pretty eventful week in Tiger Town. Obviously, like the weekend didn't go the way we wanted it to on the Diamond.
That's right.
When football has a way, even in the off-season recruiting, at least for me, I don't know about you, but when you get a commitment or two, and you're coming off an official visit weekend, it kind of helps, keep your mind off of what you just witnessed. So
That's right.
That's how I'm living. How are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing pretty good. It's been a busy week in the Craven household over here, but I mean, I can't complain. Everything's good. Still living, still breathing, still having a good time. The Tigers recruiting is on fire, so that's a good thing. About to take another trip. Softball is in full swing, as you know. So another 3-day tournament this weekend. So I'll be hitting the road tomorrow evening and traveling down to Myrtle Beach for a softball tournament. So we'll be down there for a 3-day one. Hopefully we have a good time down there. But yeah, the season on the Diamond did not end the way that we wanted it to for the Tigers. But you knew as soon as Clemson ended up in that losers bracket, it was all but over at that point. They just did not have the pitching depth to play themselves out of a losers bracket scenario. And you kind of pointed that out last week when we were talking about the regional and things like that. And, you kind of mentioned that they just have to stay out of the losers bracket, and they didn't. They kind of gave that game away. Which they've done far too often this season, but disappointing end to the season. But again, a good season nonetheless, even though the postseason did not go their way. Now, Baggage and the rest of the staff got to go to work, and there's a bunch of guys transferring, and Clemson's going to bring in a bunch of transfer guys, and you got to rebuild a roster. So, once the dust settles and everybody who's going to transfers, then you could kind of piece together and try to figure out what this team's going to look like, next spring.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. And, there's a lot of frustration, amongst the fan base from that aspect. You get eliminated in your home regional for what the sixth time in seven opportunities since 2011.
Yeah.
That's not great. So, but I'm of the mindset, I still believe in what Eric Bakich has brought to this program from a culture standpoint, from a quality of play standpoint. I in a lot of ways, this team overachieved considering the lack of power in the lineup and some of the deficiencies there. So, I think, getting to host again for a third straight year, I think that was a big deal. The fan base supported, they showed out. And, I think you got to retool. I think you had some misses. You had some guys that that transferred in that didn't give you what you needed them to give you, especially in the big moments. And you just couldn't get that timely hitting in that regional. And obviously the bullpen, while it was a strength earlier in the year, definitely whittled down. And, you had some injuries. You had a couple of guys that you thought you were going to be able to count on this year that you weren't able to. And then, at the end of the season, your All-American closer has 2 straight games, 2 straight blown saves. So, it's one of those things where it was a lot of unlucky, events involved in how the season played out towards the end. But also a lot of it was just this team wasn't talented enough. They weren't bad players. I don't like, and I think you don't win 40. How many games did they win? 45 this year.
45 games.
That's not an accident.
No.
So I think you just got to retool. Some of these guys. I mean, we've already seen guys start to hit the portal. Some of these guys are going to be gone, and you're going to have to bring in some new talent and see if you can gear up next year, because that's just what you have to do. You have a good recruiting class coming in. You have some guys that got hurt this year, some true freshmen that I think will be available for you next year, and things will be good. I mean, you do got to replace an All-American, one of the best players in school history in Cam Canarella, but
that guy will not be replaced. I assure you of that. But, you can certainly try to piece together a couple guys that can maybe come close to the production that he did. Yeah.
So shout out to those guys. Shout out to the seniors. And I'm still excited to see what kind of additions they make. And you've already started to see a couple of pitching additions, which is definitely welcomed as guys with some power. The kid from Alabama, what do you think he topped out at 97?
Yeah.
So that's good stuff. I mean, he obviously you got to teach him control. He didn't play much for a reason, but Clemson just didn't have a lot of guys that could just come out of the pen and pump 95 plus.
They need some more of that. They need some guys in that bullpen that can, as you mentioned, come out there and throw 90, 95, 97 mile an hour fastballs by people. Because we certainly didn't have it. John Sarian brings up an interesting point. Did the transfer of Ethan Darden, he says it stings, but did that one surprise you at all? Did he hit the portal? No,
not particularly. And you kind of felt it. I mean, even throughout this, before he got hurt, just his place in the lineup was he was just kind of in limbo. He came out as your Saturday starter, and he had a couple of good outings, but then later in the later during his stretch he had some rough moments, and you demote him to the pen, and you're rotating guys in and out of that Saturday spot. Obviously Drew Titsworth kind of settled in a little bit as that guy later in the year, but you were just kind of trying to figure it out. Guys like BJ Bailey and Justin Lagernick, and you had guys just rotating in and out of the weekend rotation, and I think Ethan, he kind of lost his place as the season went on, and then obviously getting hurt didn't. I think it didn't really make sense for him to stick around, I guess, and you can probably understand why.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's going to be a challenge for Bakich and the coaching staff to put a roster together. Also, what does this house settlement mean? Are they going to have more scholarships now? Are they still going to have their 11 scholarships or whatever it is that the normal suiting of scholarships, or how does the roster size change, and all this stuff that could affect them in the house settlement and changes coming down the pipe to college baseball as well. So all of that is kind of up in the air, and I'm sure it's not easy to maybe predict or know when those changes will occur, even though you're pretty sure all of them are coming. You just don't necessarily know when. So makes it a little bit more challenging to build a roster in today's college baseball.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, certainly you would look for Clemson to have a much higher hit rate on the transfer portal than we had this past season. You felt good about some of the pieces that we brought in, and unfortunately, most didn't work out for us. So that's just the luck of the draw. I mean, that's kind of the thing with the portal, right? You never really know how the pieces are going to fit once they get into your program. So didn't work out the best for Clemson this year, but on to the next. All right, let's go ahead and get a quick shout out to the chat section, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the show tonight. We got 24 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hit that like button while you're in here. Get us as close to that 24 if you guys could. Really do appreciate it. John Sarian in here with the first comment of the night, one of our moderators as well. Thank you so much for being in here. Intelligent Savage, as always, 629 in here. Thank you so much for being in here. Jay's in here. Dylan Spells in here. Excuse me. Words are hard. Zachariah's in here. Let's see. Chef Brody's in here. Arthur Moss is in here. Let's see who else. I don't want to miss anybody. I don't think I missed anybody. If I missed you, it was not on purpose. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. But we need to dive into tonight's show. And obviously, we are kicking it off tonight, Jordan, with a recruiting update. Clemson is coming off a huge official visit weekend. Our big summer official visit weekend is in the books this past weekend. But before we dive into what happened in the official visit weekend and some of the dividends that we expect to come, we got to talk about a couple commits that Clemson has gotten this week. The first of this week coming in younger brother of Sammy Brown, linebacker for the Clemson Tigers. Max Brown commits to Clemson, the first commit of the 2027 class, linebacker, 6'1", 214 pounds, obviously out of Jefferson, Georgia, same high school his brother played for, and he commits to the Tigers. I saw Sammy Brown tweet out that he's a pretty good recruiter himself, so I guess Sammy Brown officially got his first recruit to commit to the Tigers. Your reaction to Max Brown shutting it down and giving his verbal commitment to the Tigers, first of the 2027 class?
In the recruiting landscape, there's always, especially nowadays with the developments of NIL and all of that, it's recruiting has definitely been as wild as it's been, in the history of the sport. So anytime you get a guy that's like a recruitment where it's basically a layup, you celebrate them. This was not a surprise to anybody at all.
No.
And, I think you got to celebrate those when you get them, because they don't come as often. And even at a program like Clemson that does so well at developing relationships and cultivating them and ultimately parlaying those into actual commitments and signings. But nowadays with all the money that's flying around, it's just you don't get those guys that often anymore. So this is a really good get, not just because it was you have a prior relationship with that family, and obviously
Right.
they have a lot of Clemson ties in general, which helped you land his older brother. But you're getting a really, really good football player first and foremost. And 6'1", 214. He's not as physically imposing as his brother was, but again, he also has a year to continue to develop physically. But I think he's just as instinctive. He's a phenomenal athlete. You see the lineage there. I think he's a great fit for what this defense is going to be under Tom Allen. And he's a great cornerstone, a great first commit in that 2027 class, because he's going to be a guy that other kids are going to watch and follow. I mean, the Brown family in the state of Georgia, they have a lot of pull, and their name carries a lot of weight. So, it's a massive get, just like it was landing Sammy. So I'm excited and glad that Max, pulled the trigger, because it seemed like that was where it was trending. He was even before his commitment, he was teasing, when he came to Clemson
Yeah.
for the Dabo Sweeney camp, and he's taking pictures and all that, and posting pictures with his brother. It seemed very, very clear where this was headed. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got to enjoy the layups when you get them, because this
Absolutely.
was the definition of a layup.
Yeah, this was absolutely a layup. I think, most everybody thought that, even if you didn't think he was going to commit right now, you knew probably that Max Brown was going to be a Clemson Tiger when his time came. And, you mentioned his size and his development so far. I mean, he's still got a lot of football in front of him before he even arrives on campus at Clemson. Look, I'm assuming he's going to probably be an early enrollee. So the spring practice of 2027 right there. He's just heading into his junior year of high school football. He's got so much football left in front of him in high school to develop, and he's going to get developed. His dad, produces a really good product there, and obviously is going to produce another great linebacker in Max Brown. So to your point, yes, it is a layup, but it feels good anyway because of the caliber of player that he will end up being. By the time it's all said and done and he signs on the dotted line and officially dons that Tiger uniform, he will be a very highly recruited, well, I don't know about highly recruited guy, but he will be a highly thought of guy in the recruiting rankings, I think. And he's going to be a great player. So, and I'm sure he'll have some big shoes to fill from bigger brother Sammy when his time comes to get on the field for the Tigers. So great first commitment for the 2027 class. I guess we'll call Max Brown our cornerstone of the 2027 class right now. And he can start recruiting out there for the 2027 class and try to get some guys on board with him as well. But let's go ahead and shift the focus from 2027 to 2026, Jordan. And one of the guys that we talked about heading into the official visit weekend last week's show was Leo Delaney, a big-time offensive lineman. Matt Luke has been recruiting this guy extremely hard out of Providence Day. Yes, we finally get a recruit out of Providence Day in Charlotte, North Carolina. And couldn't be any bigger than this guy and Leo Delaney, physically and from just a recruiting ranking standpoint as well. Stands at 6'6", 290 pounds, 4-star recruit, number 5 in the state, number 5 in his position, and 62 nationally ranked at the offensive tackle position. Your thoughts on Leo Delaney? I know this is one of your guys that one of our commenters asked last week who you could see committing out of this official visit weekend, and you mentioned that Leo Delaney might be a guy that Clemson could potentially get to shut his recruitment down. However, we did think that he would go on to visit Penn State and, the other official visits that he had laid on, but that wasn't the case. Clearly, Clemson sealed the deal with this official visit weekend. They impressed during the elite retreat, and Dabo Sweeney and company sealed the deal this past weekend, and we officially have 4-star Leo Delaney on board. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. It's nice to get a Providence Day kid after last. I mean, and not only did you get one this class, you got two, and as of course, because you also have Gordon Sellers, his teammate at wide receiver. So that's nice to break that curse. And then more importantly, you're getting one of the best offensive linemen in the country. I mean, I think Leo from a profile standpoint, I think he's a guy that could flex and play tackle. I think he could play guard if you needed him to. I think his length certainly would serve him to play tackle. I'm interested to see kind of how Clemson views him, when he gets to campus. But I'm kind of the belief when a guy has that kind of length, that you stick him out in tackle and you let him work until it doesn't work. And then if he needs to make a change, you move him inside. But I don't know. I'm not Matt Luke, so I don't know exactly what his plan is for him. But again, you're getting a phenomenal football player. I think the length and the physicality, I think it stands out on tape.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to project as one of the highest ceiling type of players, but I think he's really well refined at his age and size right now. He's a guy that could come in and potentially play early, kind of similar to Chancellor Barkley. Like
Yeah.
I don't think that I think those two are very similar in terms of just they're both ready to play right. More ready to play than a lot of the other players in this class.
Yeah. I mean, real quick, I don't mean to cut you off, but you mentioned Chancellor Barkley, and we're talking about Leo Delaney. How about those two guys being the highest rated recruits in the 2026 class right now? And when you think about the list of recruits that Clemson has verbal commits from right now, that's saying a lot.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the fact that it's two offensive linemen leading the charge as far as ratings in the class, when's the last time you could say something like that at Clemson? It's been a while. So
certainly.
shout out to Matt Luke. And he's bringing in these mammoth beasts, man. Like this offensive line's going to look real good getting off the bus. I can tell you that for as long as Matt Luke's going to be here.
Yeah. It was cool to see his commitment live, even though you had to wait like 40 plus minutes because 24/7 Sports used it as bait to watch their entire college football show. And then they gave him a little segment at the end to commit after everybody was tuned in thinking he was going to commit at 4:00. But regardless of the clickbait, I get, they're a media company. They got to do what they got to do. It was cool to see. And, obviously he cited the culture and all the things that, stuck out to him. And I mean, this official visit was really a needle mover because, coming into the weekend, I wouldn't have said he was a Clemson lean, because throughout his recruitment, Tennessee at one point had a lot of momentum that kind of faded. But really, the two teams that were Clemson's chief competition were one Michigan and two Penn State. And, they both carried momentum in that recruitment at different points. But this official visit was the needle mover, like the biggest needle mover for him. And the fact that they were able to get him to shut it down was it's massive, man. But
yeah, those teams you mentioned, they don't even get official visits. They didn't even get that far. So, there's something to be said there.
Exactly. I mean, and two Big Ten schools, and Michigan in particular, that's produced at a high level at offensive line. I mean, I think that says a lot about what Matt Luke has brought to this program. I mean, just this offensive line class right now, and you still have a couple of big fish that you're still in it for.
Right.
This is the best collection of offensive line talent I've seen committed to Clemson ever.
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident saying that there's not another class that comes to mind that even comes close. Just the caliber of player. You got what is it? 5 top 250 offensive linemen, and Braden Williams is a really highly regarded 3-star. Like, I think that says a lot. It says a ton about what Matt Luke has brought to this program from just a recruiting standpoint, and it's been different than kind of how Clemson has gone about recruiting offensive line in the past. I mean, Matt Luke has not been afraid to he's went out and cast a wide net. He's gone after it, and he's really hit the trail hard. He hasn't been very shy about getting guys on campus. I mean, because that's not even mentioning guys like Carter Scruggs, who I'll talk about in a minute. And Kenny Ogboko was in town. Darius Gray was in town. You had a lot of talent, not just committed, but talent that you are actively recruiting, and that's just different from how Clemson has done it at other positions. Where they have their select group of guys. Obviously the emphasis this cycle was bringing in a generational. Especially with it in the context of this program's history, a generational offensive line class, because this is a great year to do it. And there's a lot of talented players out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this offensive line haul from Matt Luke is you can see the tide that has turned since we brought Matt Luke on board, and this is kind of something to kind of lean into. what me and you have had discussions both on the show and off the show about, how special Clemson's run was, right, for those 6 years of consecutive playoff runs, and how special the Dabo Swinney era has been. But the one position group that we've never really been able to be elite at is the offensive line, and those days seem to be behind us. Matt Luke is going to produce an elite level offensive line, I feel like, as long as he's here at Clemson. The recruits are piling in. The guys that he's getting on campus are not guys that Clemson could have gotten otherwise. And I know that's high praise for a coach, and kind of making him a little bit bigger than the program, but it's honestly true. His pedigree that he brought into Clemson, of the guys that he's produced and sent to the NFL, is the reason that Clemson is getting the guys that they are on campus, and not only getting them on campus, but getting them to commit. There's been an entire wholesale shift within the offensive line group from the day that he stepped on Clemson's campus, with just the recruits he had in the building already, but the guys that he's adding now. I mean, it's exciting to think about what Clemson's offensive line can become and be consistent year after year with Matt Luke at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, because in years past, like, even just one of these guys would have been the cornerstone.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been like
the line group.
Yeah,
you've got multiple, you got several of them, and that's exciting. Like, these are and it's not just the guys that they're undersized, but but what Clemson will develop them, and we'll figure out these are guys that otherwise would have gone to big time SEC and Big Ten programs that produce high caliber offensive line talent.
And you're snatching them away from these programs, and these programs are wanting these players. They're going after these guys. They're offering these guys a bunch of money to come play for their program, but instead these guys are obviously they're getting paid from Clemson as well. I'm not saying Clemson's out here just selling hopes and dreams and Paul Journey and stuff like that. No, they're giving these players some money as well. Maybe not as much as a Michigan or Penn State or something like that, but they're definitely making some money. Make no mistake about it. But as you mentioned, the guys that you're landing now, it's a complete 180 from before. Before, Clemson's whole MO on the offensive line was, we're going to take, like you mentioned, these undersized guys, and we're going to grow them up for 2 and 3 years, and then hopefully they'll be ready to step in and play some meaningful football, right? That was the Clemson recipe at offensive line for years and years and years. And now we've done a complete 180 on that, and we're bringing in the right size and the right athleticism. And a lot of these guys are, although they're big, they're versatile at the same time. And that's going to be key in a Garrett Riley offense as well.
100%.
So exciting news. Max Brown, Leo Delaney, both commits out of obviously the football camp that Max Brown was involved in, and then Leo Delaney coming off of the official visit weekend. But we still got some recruiting stuff to talk about, Jordan. Obviously, everybody in the comment section is wondering what happened at the official visit weekend. We clearly don't have as much momentum as we did out of the elite retreat, right? I think we rattled off 8 commits immediately following the elite retreat, or the week or so after the elite retreat. Clearly, we're not having that sort of success heading out of the official visit weekend, but I don't think that means that the official visit weekend wasn't a success. And I think you're going to get into that with a couple of guys and some guys that we're looking forward to. I know the comment section has already asked several times, who do we see committing? Who's close to committing? Who did we make a lot of ground up with at the official visit weekend? So from your perspective, everything you've read and heard from your sources, how did the official visit weekend going? And who are these players that Clemson Tiger fans should be paying attention to as the weeks go on after the official visit weekend, and guys that could potentially be committing in, the next weeks and months that are to come?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this official visit weekend didn't, produce the string of commitments that we kind of became used to after the past couple of years. But a lot of that is because you've had more guys, in the boat already when the weekend rolled around. So I've got to keep that in mind. But from all reports, anywhere you read, I mean, the official visit weekend was a overwhelming success. And, I think you moved the needle for a lot of guys that were on campus, a lot of guys that I think would be phenomenal additions. I'll hit on a couple of them. I know the big fish that everybody's been talking about is linebacker Tyler Atkinson. I think it was a visit that went as well as it possibly could have. And I think Clemson has put themselves in a position where I think they'll be in they'll be in that final group when it's all said and done. I'm not saying that they should be considered the favorite, that they're the leader, but there are a lot of good things going on that seem to indicate that Tyler Atkinson will be. It'll be hard for Tyler Atkinson to say no to Clemson when it's all said and done, and you have a legitimate shot in this one. Of course, he announced today that he'll be at Oregon this weekend. This is not a shock to anybody. We both said, I think last week, that expecting Tyler Atkinson to come in and shut things down over the weekend was probably wishful thinking. So it doesn't change how I feel about the recruitment. I think Clemson is in a position where they'll be able to be competitive from an NIL standpoint. And I think that all the other things it's about setting yourself apart from the other contenders. Obviously, Oregon is going to be involved. Georgia, of course, USC. So, I think you got to hold the course and you got to keep reminding him about what appealed to him about Clemson. And I think you'll be there at the finish line when it's all said and done. And so it'll be a game of inches though. But I think Clemson is legitimately in that contention to land his commitment. So I think that's about all you can ask for with a recruitment as high level and high profile as that is. You've put all your chips into his basket. That essentially with Caleb Gordon, you basically essentially scratched him off your board, and you could let him go and I think he committed to Arkansas this week. So you've made a statement that you are our priority. You are the priority, and that's what you have to do. And I think that's what it's going to take in order to land his commitment. So I think Clemson did a great job, like I said, and we'll see kind of as he goes through his visits. We'll definitely learn more about what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it was a great official visit weekend. Tons of guys on campus, and Clemson always does these things right. Like they go about it. I know every university and program, they have their ways of doing these official visit weekends, right? I mean, Clemson, in my opinion, does it really well, right? They take a day, they go out to the lake, they're having fun outside of football, right? They do a couple bonding things, right? They go to Dabo's house and they're playing basketball and they're talking trash and they're shooting hoops with each other and having a good time, right? Larry Fitzgerald was at Dabo's house, right? All sorts of big name people there, big recruits there. It was a successful weekend, and then it's always that closing speech, right, that you hear about from Dabo that he always does, and just kind of outlines the program and the philosophy and why they do things certain ways. And he's obviously going to hit with the parents in the room, right? Dabo's going to hit big on the education piece, right? He's going to talk about the graduation rate. He's going to talk about the retention rate. He's going to talk about when we offer you a scholarship at Clemson, you're here until graduation, right? He's going to outline all those things. And I think it resonates with the right guys, right? And that's who the guys that end up committing to Clemson. And yes, there's an NIL piece to all of this, and that can't be understated. And you're going to bat with a lot of these big programs. You mentioned, Michigan and Penn State and Tennessee and Alabama, and you're recruiting against all the big guys, right? Texas, whoever you want to name. But Clemson does it in a unique way, and I think that's why they have so much success out of these official visit weekends, because they approach it in my opinion a very holistic way, right? Yes, there's a huge football component to the weekend, but it's not just about that. And I think that's one of the things that helps resonate with some of these athletes and their families when they're on campus. Plus, as we mentioned before, there's just something in those hills, right? So when you get somebody on Clemson's campus who have never been there before, it's a beautiful campus. You got the mountains, you got the lakes. It's a very picturesque place and a small town feel, and I think that helps out as well.
Absolutely, 100%. And they always tend to do a good job. A couple of other names that I think that obviously Clemson fans are going to want to keep an eye on. I mentioned Carter Scruggs earlier in the show. As that he's kind of the apple of the remaining guys on your board that I think Clemson has the best shot of landing. I think this weekend was really, really just another reminder of why, of what draws him to Clemson. I think it's still up in the air about, whether he's going to make it through all of his official visits. That's this is kind of wait and see, but I think Clemson is, I would, based off of just my gut feeling is I think that Clemson is probably the leader right now, but that doesn't mean he's going to shut it down. Doesn't mean official visit weekend, the official visits aren't going to continue and maybe change his perspective. He's a guy that's definitely going to want to take his time and consider everything. But I think Carter Scruggs is, of all the guys, especially on the offensive line that Clemson has remaining on the board, I think he's far and away the best shot of also being in the class. A couple of other names that, they were kind of moving the needle for. Safety Blake Stewart. We talked about him a good bit. He came on campus with Tylen Wilson and Joey O'Brien. I think this was a eye-opening visit for him in a lot of ways. So I think you got to keep that in mind. And that doesn't mean I think you're going to land him, but I think I'm keeping an eye on him. I'm also, of course, keeping an eye on Joey O'Brien, but of course he's got visits to, the likes of Penn State. And other programs as well. I think Penn State is Clemson's chief competition there. And I think Tylen Wilson is probably the biggest long shot. But getting him on campus was a big deal as well. Of course, on the defensive line, obviously you're the two main guys that you're looking at, defensive lineman Bryce Perry White and defensive end Dre Quinn. I think they both had really, really great visits. And, Bryce Perry White, I keep saying it, you got to win this one. But Dre Quinn as well, because, now at this point, he's basically your only guy on the board as far as defensive end, other than J.R. Hardrick, who I feel pretty strongly will be in the boat here pretty soon. So, you need to solidify that defensive line class. You can't just have a class of Cam Cody. As much as I like him as a recruit, he can't be your only guy. So I think it's been kind of slower on the defensive line standpoint. But if you land Bryce Perry White and Dre Quinn along with J.R. Hardrick, that definitely changes the complexion of this class a lot. So I'm keeping an eye on those guys as well. Anybody else I really wanted to hit on? Devin Fitzgerald, of course, came. I was kind of skeptical coming into the weekend about whether or not, he would end up in the class, but he did get the offer. It seems like, Clemson is would be willing to take a fourth receiver, and I think he would be a good complement to what this group is. I think he had a great visit, and he's the physical. Big outside guy, not as twitchy as some of the the other guys you have committed, but he's definitely a guy that's going to play on the outside, and he's kind of similar to what you wanted in Sedarian Morgan, but obviously not the same athlete, but definitely the ex receiver body type of player, and so. I think I wasn't sure whether he was going to. Obviously Clemson wasn't going to bring him on campus if they weren't going to offer him. But I wasn't sure whether or not it would be something that Clemson would push for, as far as maybe trying to get him to commit or anything like that. But it seems like they really like him, and I think he would be a good addition to this wide receiver class. So
yeah, you saw a couple Clemson players tweeting out that they got to spend some time with Larry Fitzgerald and kind of pick his brain a little bit and talk to him. So that was pretty cool as well.
Yep.
Couple questions here for you, Jordan. Dylan Spell says, whatever happened to Samari Matthews? Will Clemson add another cornerback this class?
Yeah, with Samari Matthews, that was a recruitment that I had said previously. I mean, everything pointed to that recruitment starting to trend away from you. I think it's become a little bit more of a financial recruitment than Clemson was really willing to engage in. And you've had programs like Texas and Miami, enter the sweepstakes. Of course, they're still battling South Carolina. So we'll obviously I'm going to keep an eye on that recruitment, but Clemson is out. So that's not going to be an option. So, I think this just kind of was what it was there. You're not going to be able to can't land everybody. And Samari Matthews would have been a phenomenal addition to the class, but I think that was a situation where the money aspect was getting a little too much, and it's just not something that Clemson was willing to fight that hard on. So we'll kind of see how that continues to play out.
Absolutely. David gets in. Thank you so much, first of all, for being a channel member. Thank you for supporting this channel in that way, David. He says, what about Dalton Tupman? Heard good things about landing him.
Yeah, I think he also had a phenomenal visit. With Dalton, I think a lot of it is just kind of Clemson isn't pushing as hard, and I think that's they want to see kind of how things play out with Noah Scruggs Carter Scruggs, and from that aspect, that's my read on the situation. And obviously he also has a lot of other prospects, and he just wasn't. He didn't give the staff a commitment over the weekend, but I do think that Clemson, it was a great visit for him, and but he also, you got to consider when you have a class as loaded as Clemson has, guys are not always going to be as willing to jump into the boat immediately because you have so many guys in the boat. So I think with Dalton, that's kind of a wait and see right now.
Eric says Joey commits June 20th, but he's also visiting Notre Dame the same day.
Yeah, I found that interesting. Somebody pointed that out to me earlier today, and I was like, oh, I didn't even really think about that. I really don't know what to make of that, to be honest with you. But, Penn State and Notre Dame are your biggest competition for him. So, I don't really have an idea of kind of what that could potentially mean. What does that mean? He goes through and he's going to commit to Notre Dame on his Notre Dame visit, or is he going to even take his Notre Dame visit? That remains to be seen. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep an eye on that. But guys, that's kind of the recruiting roll-up heading out of the official visit weekend. Very successful weekend for the Clemson Tigers, obviously adding Leo Delaney to the 2026 recruiting class and Max Brown to the 2027 recruiting class, the first commit of the 2027 cycle. So if you guys got any questions, get them in. We'll get to them at the end of the show, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next segment. Before we do, we got 43 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for getting in here and supporting the show by being in here. Get your questions and comments into the comment section. Once we're done with the planned portion of the show, we'll turn it over to you guys and answer as many questions as time will allow before we get out of here. So thank you guys for that as well. Also, quick mention for everybody in here. If you guys did not know, the Voice of College Football has a new home. and that is none other than the Voice of College Football official webpage. Your one-stop shop for all things Voice of College Football. You got your schedule, your show schedule off to the left over there. You got your various articles. You got forums that you can get in there and chop it up with people about different teams, your team or other teams. Our hosts are on there, various writers that contribute to the page as well. So if you guys have not already, go over there, check it out. Sorry about that. Go over there, check it out, make an account, and just let us know what you think. Let us know what you would like to see added, what you would like to see more on the page. Give us feedback about the webpage, and that would be greatly appreciated, guys. All right, Jordan, we got to talk about a lot of the things going on in the offseason of this college football season. It has been, we've talked about conference expansion. We've talked about different formats for the new and upcoming expanded playoff, even though we just expanded to 12 teams, but apparently that's not enough. We need to expand more, and we got to figure out what format we're going to. And one of the other things that have come up, and it's been talked about in the past several times, but as everybody knows, the ACC and the SEC both are the two conferences that only play 8 conference games. And there's, some noise out there in the SEC about them going to, possibly going to 9 conference games. But here's the question that immediately goes in my mind when I hear the SEC going to 9 conference games and possibly having a rotating schedule with the Big Ten for a 10th game on the schedule. Are we seeing the death of rivalry weekend? What do I mean by that? The death of rivalry weekend would mean to me, if you look in the SEC, there is several teams, Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky, just to name a few, that have ACC in-state rivals that they play on rivalry weekend every single year. And it's been that way for a long time, for as long as we can remember, right? For as long as we've been watching college football. And now it seems that those very games, as much as the universities, I don't think South Carolina wants to not play Clemson. I know for certain Clemson doesn't not want to not play South Carolina, right? Both universities want those games to happen. But let me pose to you this scenario, Jordan, and let's just get your thoughts and we'll talk about it. And those of you in the comment section, let me know what you think. Let's say the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule, right? And then has a rotating scheduling agreement, if you will, with the Big Ten. That would be 10 Power 5 opponents that every SEC team is playing each and every year. Is any SEC team really going to be interested in adding an 11th Power 5 game, especially when it's a rivalry game for an in-state rival? I don't know. I don't see that happening. And I just think we're getting to a point in college football where we're talking about all this expansion and we're talking about all this schedule changes, and we're not thinking about necessarily repercussions that could come from said schedule changes, right? Those are my thoughts. Jordan, what do you think about the situation? Not that you care whether the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule or not, but really where it affects us is obviously the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry. I don't want to see rivalry weekend go away or be diminished in any way, any significant way at all. So your thoughts on the potential schedule change and just all the stuff that is just kind of, like I've said before, time and time again, they just slowly chip away at the fabric of what makes college football. And when you think of college football, in my mind, one of the first things I think about is rivalry weekend. I mean, it's one of the most energy-filled, intense weekends in all of college football. So your thoughts?
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting, topic and conversation because, there are so many, there's so much crossover from the rivalry weekend between, the SEC and the ACC. From a Clemson standpoint, I'm not worried as much. I do think administratively, Clemson and South Carolina seem to be on the same page. At least from what I've been told, and from what people who are close to the South Carolina program have reported, there seems to be no intention of ever dropping the game. So from that standpoint, I think that's a good thing. I think both universities are on the same page and very clear and lockstep in that they intend to keep that game on the schedule. No matter what changes throughout the sport happen. So I think that's a good thing. Because you're seeing it across the sport. I mean, obviously, I was talking SEC, ACC, but it's not just those teams that are involved in rivalry weekend. And one of the biggest rivalries in college football, and USC and Notre Dame, I think, is very much in danger of dying.
Yeah.
Or at least the annual series, going away. And because the Big Ten, 9 conference games, and the USC, especially administratively, seems to be of the mindset that they don't want to play that extra game against it's not a power 4 opponent, but they're the equivalent within within the independents. So,
right.
I think that's going to start a wave potentially, for other programs of where you wouldn't see, those annual games being played, especially if they're not an in-conference foe. Like, well, obviously we're talking about non-conference, but especially if their biggest rival is an in-conference foe, and their regular non-conference rival is like a secondary rivalry, like they might be willing to drop it, even if it has a lot of eyeballs on it, and it's is well regarded by the fans. So I think USC Notre Dame is the prime example right now of the changes in the sport affecting rivalries, and I would hate to see that rivalry go, but it seems like that's very likely. I would be surprised if USC and Notre Dame line up on the schedule next year. So that's sad.
It's unfortunate, man. It's one of the biggest games in college football, right? Regardless of what you think of Notre Dame, regardless of what you think of Southern Cal, it's still a massive rivalry game and has been for years. And it's just unfortunate. I get it from a financial standpoint. And you got the house settlement, and you got to pay players $20+ million now, and everything's more expensive than it ever was. And these conferences, they need money. So I get it. Like, it's every decision made in college football right now is solely focused on what is going to make the most money. That's just it. Like, if you want to line up all the decisions that have been made, it's all in effort to get more money. Expanding the playoff. The only reason they expanded the playoff is because it makes them more money. Do you think they really care about inclusion of teams that couldn't get in a 4-team playoff? No. They expanded the playoff because it makes them more money. The reason they want the SEC to go to a 9-game schedule is because it would make the SEC as a conference more money, right? The TV revenue goes up. That's another gain, right? For each team that's a big ticket TV game, right? A conference game, right? So I understand that why the decisions are being made, and that the main catalyst is money. But it's just unfortunate because they strip away at the fabric of college football, and it slowly just degrades. Not that I don't love the sport, not that I think rivalry weekend is going away completely, but these are just things that are being talked about and could happen that could greatly affect some of these rivalries. Obviously not all of them, because a lot of great rivalries are conference rivals, right? As well as in-state rivals. But in the case of the SEC and the ACC, there's a lot of crossover there. And yeah, maybe 2027 comes around and Clemson moves on and joins the SEC, and all of this is a moot point, and none of it mattered anyway. But from where we are right now, I don't like it. I don't like all the changes that are happening. I like some of them. I don't like all of them. And that's one of the ones where, if you're going to start messing with rivalry weekend in any way or degrading that weekend of college football in any way, I'm out. I don't want to hear none of that. I'm not in support of any of that. That's one of my favorite weekends in every college football season, regardless of – and it's not just – I don't just watch the Clemson-South Carolina game, right? Like, I love all the rivalries, right? Like, Auburn, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, like all the big rivalry games, like those are exciting. Those are that's part of what makes college football. So I hope that all these talks and decisions don't end up affecting that weekend. That's the long version of what I'm trying to say. So get your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. Would the SEC go into a 9-game schedule and possibly having a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, making them have 10 power games a season, would that affect these ACC crossover rivalries? Let me know what you guys think. All right, guys, we'll be right back after a word from our very own Mark Rogers.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
All right, you heard Mark there. Those of you that shop on Amazon, which is probably pretty much all of you, go in the description of the video, get that Amazon link, and when you check out, make sure you use the Amazon link. It doesn't affect you in any way. It just helps support the Voice of College Football, and we thank you so much for that. 32 people in the live chat right now. Hit that like button while you're in here, and if you're in here, you might as well subscribe. Get us closer to that 6,000 subscriber goal that we have, and we're going to dive right into the next segment. I'm sure everybody out there by now, it's been out for a week or so, has seen the Belichick Dabo interview that Reese Davis did on the ESPN YouTube page or wherever it was posted. George, your thoughts on this interview? It was a very lengthy one. An hour and a half, I think, was the total time for the interview. They talked about everything from, recruiting to, ties that they've had and people that they've worked with, and them not really having a relationship and knowing each other, to things that they look for in certain players, to philosophy on continued success and consistency, all the way to book writing and all this other stuff. So they went into a myriad of different issues, but what was your just overall general thoughts on the interview? I thought it was really interesting. Kind of Dabo Swinney and Bill Belichick go back and forth. Bill at one time was like, "Hey, Reese, can I ask some questions?" And he had a few questions for Dabo, which I thought was pretty funny and kind of, made the interview a little bit more fun. But Bill in that interview, now make no mistake, I don't make a habit of going out there watching a bunch of Bill Belichick interviews. So far be it for me to be like some expert on how he typically is in interviews, but he seemed like like a pretty cool guy in the interview, lighthearted, laughed a lot, smiled a lot, cracked some jokes. Overall, I thought it was really cool just to watch two coaches of that caliber. Obviously, Bill Belichick being, arguably the greatest NFL coach of all time with all the Super Bowls that he has, and then, transferring down into college, and, Dabo Swinney, with his multiple national championships in college and them talking about coaches that influenced them and their pedigree. So what were your thoughts on the interview and kind of what stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty insightful. I thought Reese Davis did a good job with kind of teeing him up, and he just kind of let him go. I don't remember him talking all that much. It was
right.
kind of it kind of turned into a back and forth, especially after the first couple of questions. So that was cool. It felt like a conversation, and that was nice. But yeah, they hit on a lot of different things. I mean, obviously as Clemson fans, a lot of the stuff Dabo said was not new stuff that we hadn't heard before. So we definitely already get his philosophy and his understandings and ideas on things. So it was cool to hear Bill kind of bounce off of that and give his own takes. I thought one of the things that was really interesting with Bill was kind of his kind of the how he goes about how he applies his knowledge, when it comes to like the people that are around him. One of the things he said was like, I don't really try to mentor, other coaches. Like, I thought that was interesting because like a guy with, that kind of, that level of experience and that level of success, you would think, okay, they're going to be guys that they come up to him and ask him stuff all the time, and he's going to want to impart his knowledge onto those guys. But he said, I don't really do that. He said, he's like, yeah, I'll, if I see something that maybe somebody could be doing a little bit better, I'll let them know. But like, I'm not like in the mentor, type. I don't consider myself that kind of guy. And he's like, because I feel like I'm still learning. And I thought that was interesting. That was I didn't expect to hear that perspective from him because, I definitely think, from a Dabo standpoint, he definitely takes coaches under his wing and tries to be a mentor.
Right.
But, they both came at it from an understanding that they both were still learning and that, you're like one of the things that you have to, in order to be as successful as you are and continue to be as successful as you are, is you have to keep learning and know that you don't know everything. So I thought that was an interesting part of the interview. They touched on a lot of different things just as far as coaching philosophy that was really interesting. And they had some, my favorite part was Dabo explaining BYOG and the Roy bus. So that was
hilarious. That was hilarious that those were the questions that Bill Belichick wanted to be answered by Dabo. He kind of hijacked the interview at that point and was like, where did that come from? So it was kind of fun to listen, to the story that Dabo told about, where it came from. Much like most of Dabo's quotes, it's just like he's in the moment and he says something and it just sticks.
Yeah, it was funny. Bill, like when he said who his favorite player that he scouted from Clemson, then that it was Christian Wilkins. I was like, well, that's not surprising. So it was cool to just kind of having those two, like, even though they didn't have many prior connections, and that like he had only been to Clemson like one time, that they were able to talk about, so because they just had so many shared experiences, and even though they had like different backgrounds and stuff, and they were talking about the coaches that they learned from. Dabo, of course, learned under Gene Stallings when he was a graduate assistant, and Bill Belichick, he learned over a myriad of different coaches, but started under Lou Holtz, and of course he was all over the place, but it was cool kind of seeing how those two go about doing things, and there was clearly a good amount of respect for each other, even though I would definitely consider them very different coaches in terms of style and philosophy.
Oh yeah. I think they are vastly different coaches, and kind of their just the way they conduct themselves, the way they go about things, but have a lot of the same principles at the same time. You kind of hear them talk about long-term success and what it takes, and you mentioned being a lifelong learner and all of those things, and just you hear Dabo talk about, you have to have a conviction and a vision that you believe in, and that there's a balance between. I like that Reese Davis kind of asked Dabo an interesting question, and I really like the answer that he gave. He was kind of asking, how do you go about adapting in today's college football? When you have hard and fast things that you believe in for your program, and kind of Dabo went on to say that, one, you got to have a conviction, right, and a vision for your program, and you don't necessarily compromise that, right? But you're always learning things, you're always adjusting things, but you stay steadfast in the kind of core things for your program, and that kind of carries you through. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then the connections that they have with coaches that they've kind of been around was super interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just kind of cool hearing especially their upbringing and kind of how it shaped what they, how they became, coaches and how they went about, like their coaching philosophy and what they valued. So that was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. One of the other things that kind of stood out to me was when Dabo was talking about Gene Stallings and kind of the impact that he had on his career, and how he felt like he had met Bear Bryant, right, because of the interactions and the 7 years that he had, serving under Gene Stallings and those kind of things. So it's always interesting to hear like how these coaches are molded, right, when they're young, right? Because Dabo's told the story before about how he didn't want to get into coaching, and Gene Stallings was basically like, "Well, you're going to be my grad assistant, and you're going to get your master's degree. So I don't know what to tell you."
Yep.
Which is really funny. Something to work out that way, and then to find out that it's your true calling, if you will, is really cool. So. Yeah, man. It was a pretty cool interview, I think. Super informative, I think, of just kind of getting a feel for Bill Belichick. I don't know a ton about Bill Belichick. I'm not like an avid follower, of coaches in the NFL or anything like that, right? Like I follow players, I follow careers and stuff like that. But I'm not. I don't dive in deep like I do in college football. So it was kind of cool to see like an hour and a half long, just open format interview. I think Reese Davis did a great job of just letting them two talk, to your point. And you kind of just saw kind of a little bit of who they are. We already know who Dabo is. Obviously, we're Clemson fans, but it was kind of cool to see Bill Belichick in a little bit more like unstructured interview setting, where he was just kind of like storytelling and they were feeding off each other. So I enjoyed it. It was a great watch. If you guys haven't seen it, you should definitely go check it out.
Yeah, that definitely the most, the most energy I've heard out of Bill Belichick in an interview.
Right.
Because his post game interview when he was in the NFL is,
we snapped the ball and Brady threw a touchdown and the game was over. So but the other guy missed the tackle, so it wasn't great.
Yeah.
It's like, what'd you say, Bill? That's what I know of Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Like little short clips like that, and I'm like, bro, how does the media even talk to this guy right now? What are we doing? So to see him in that format, it was like, oh, okay. I guess he does have a little bit of energy and personality in there somewhere. Maybe he doesn't show it a lot, but it's in there.
Yeah.
Leave it to Dabo to pull Bill Belichick out and, make him a little bit more energetic for an interview.
Yeah. It was definitely the most engaged I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
All right, guys, make sure you're checking Clemson live on all your favorite audio streaming platforms: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcast. Go check us out. Just search Clemson Live. All of our long-form content will be right there for you to listen to and consume wherever and whenever you like to listen to your podcast. whether it's on a long drive, whether you're in the gym, running on the treadmill, walking on a trail, whenever you like to consume your podcast, check us out, Clemson Live. Rate, review, subscribe over there, and we appreciate that. Is Clemson a lock to win the ACC? That's an interesting question, Jordan. We're going to talk about, obviously, Clemson in this segment. We're going to talk about some other contenders in the ACC to kind of wrap up our show tonight, but it's an interesting question that I saw posed by an article out there that I skimmed over, and it's just talking about, is Clemson and should they be a lock to win the ACC? I guess short answer. What would be your short answer to that question before we dive into the nuance that obviously comes with a question such as this, as we sit in June before the season starts?
Yeah, no, that's probably my short answer.
The short answer is no.
Yeah.
All right, great. I think that as well. When you're talking about a team being a lock to win a conference, it means that they are far and above. There's basically zero competition there, and it would be some crazy series of events that would cause them to not win the conference. Although I'm a believer in the 2025 version of the Clemson Tigers and how good I believe they can and will be this season, I do not believe that they are that far above and that there's no other talent in the ACC that could challenge them for that ACC crown, right? So, Jordan, since we're talking about it, let's talk about some teams that could potentially challenge Clemson for the ACC title, and how likely is Clemson to be atop the ACC when it's all said and done on conference championship weekend?
Yeah, when we're talking about within the context of the ACC, I mean, yeah, nobody's a lock. Obviously, I don't think that is surprising to anybody, but I do think Clemson is obviously they should be considered the clear favorite.
Yes.
Considering the level of talent that they're returning. I think they have the fewest questions of anybody in the conference right now. Even though, but I do think this team has questions. It's not nearly to the extent of some of these other teams, especially the teams that are on par or relatively on par with Clemson as far as caliber of player. So from that standpoint, I guess that's probably why people would even write an article like that. Is Clemson a lock to win the ACC? But yeah, they're not a lock, and especially considering within the context of the last few seasons, there's no reason to ever to say that about Clemson. Maybe if this was during the Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence years, like okay, that would probably be a more reasonable time to do that. But this team is a lot of what this team's hype is projection. They were a 4-loss team last year, so you can't just you can't say they're a lock to do anything. They were. Yeah. If Miami doesn't lose to Syracuse, we're having a different conversation about that season in general. So it's and I don't like always using that argument, but within the context of the margins were that slim between Clemson, winning the ACC and not even being in the game at all. So
right, and part of it is like, even if you look back at, like, let's say, probably one of the best teams, if not the best team, the 2018 national championship team. They blew out essentially everybody they played.
Yeah.
Right. But even going into that season, they weren't a lock for the ACC. They were the far and above odds-on favorite to win the ACC. But I don't know that Clemson's ever been a lock going into any season to win the ACC. And I know we went to 6 straight national championship or 6 straight playoff appearances and 4 national championships and won 2 of them, right? But at the same time, like, that's discounting some of the other very talented teams in the conference. And there are several teams that could be potential landmines on Clemson's schedule and then also challenge them should they make it to that ACC championship game.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And when you look at you look around the league, there are some teams that are definitely going to be in that conversation that people are going to talk about. That could potentially have a big year. I mean, obviously the obvious team right now in the second in the odds market is Miami. With Miami, I'm interested to see kind of what that defense looks like. They were abysmal last year, and obviously their new coordinator from Minnesota is going to try to get more out of that group than their previous coordinator was able to do. So I mean, they brought in a ton of transfers. They have some key guys, a couple of key guys coming back. But I don't really know what to think of that defense right now. I think the defensive line will be good, but other than that, I'm not. The secondary is still a huge question mark. We'll see how those transfers mesh, and then of course their big addition on the offensive side of the ball was replacing the number 1 overall pick with Carson Beck, who spent most of last year injured, and obviously didn't even throw in the spring this past spring. He didn't even throw because he's still recovering. So they're the second odds favorite, and you don't really know what you're going to get out of that team this year with a new quarterback, and they got to replace the receivers too. Their all-time leading wide receiver, and
and I mean
they lost another one to the portal.
Right.
There's
and even if the thing with Miami, they're the second odds-on favorite, but you point out some of their question marks, and obviously they've made addition through the portals and through the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff, and make no mistake, they've done well. But let's just assume that the offense is even close to what it was last year, right? That defense has a long way to go. And I know you've made a change, and you expect improvement and all of that stuff, but I mean, they were bad last year, so that's still a massive question mark for a team like Miami. But they can certainly be the team standing there at the end, atop the ACC, no doubt about it.
And then when you look at some other teams that other college football sites are kind of touting as a potential threat to Clemson in the ACC. I mean, you've got Georgia Tech and Louisville, and of course SMU, who was in the game last year.
Yeah,
I mean those are kind of the main teams that you see brought up. Georgia Tech, of course, is brings back Haynes King and a really experienced offensive line and some good weapons. Even though they lost Eric Singleton to the transfer portal, and he's now at Auburn.
Yeah.
And their defense has gotten better year after year. Brent Key does have that team. They're a lot more competent, but are they going to be able to make that jump and be a true ACC contender? I don't know.
Right.
Louisville, they got to replace Tyler Shuck, and they got to replace a lot of pieces on that defense. I think they'll have a sneaky good wide receiver room, and they have some really good backs. And Duke Watson and Isaac Brown. So that they're going to lean on them a good bit. They brought in the transfer Miller Moss to be that next guy that Jeff Brom seems to always get out of the transfer portal. He's always going to get an experienced Power 5 starter. So we'll see how it works out. But Louisville could be a really good team again, and of course Clemson has to go up there on a Friday night later in the season. So that'll be.
Yeah, Louisville seems to be, just one of those teams, but specifically under Jeff Brom, they're just kind of right there, right towards the end of the season. They're right in the mix for the ACC championship, and towards the top of the conference. So it'll certainly be interesting breaking in a new quarterback, all that kind of stuff. But you assume Jeff Brom, as he's done in the past, will strike gold in the transfer portal and have those dudes ready. Not looking forward to that Friday night game, by the way. That Clemson's got to travel up on a short week after playing Florida State. Regardless of what you think of Florida State, that's just not a good position to be in on a Friday night. But yeah, you mentioned Georgia Tech. I think they could be sneaky good this year. How good are they actually going to be? Seems like Brent Key's got them trending in the right direction for a couple of years now, right? So can they put it together in 2025 and make some noise? We'll find out week 3, right? Clemson gets that game early in the season, right after Troy, I believe. So that'll be an interesting play as well. And then SMU, I think they're the third odds-on favorite behind Miami to win the ACC this year, and they're basically replacing their entire offensive line. Which, if you are going to replace your offensive line, you got the right quarterback because he can create when things break down. So I guess that's one good thing that they have. But how are they going to do with replacing the pieces? I know they kind of struck gold year one, moving up to the Power 4 level, but they still have a lot of the roster that's not necessarily Power 4 level talent. No disrespect to SMU or their roster. I know they recruit really well, for what they are, but reloading at a place that has just moved up into the Power 4 level, I don't know if that will be, I don't know if they can just reload and compete at the same level as they did last year. That remains to be seen, right? So definitely some question marks there. But Clemson's got some real competition. If Carson Beck works out at Miami, I mean, they could be pretty special, especially if you get even like a half better defense than they trotted out on the field last year. Their defense just, I mean, if you needed a get right game, you played Miami, and your offense would look much better than it actually is. So, and that's part of the reason that they played themselves out of an ACC championship opportunity last year by dropping that late game to Syracuse. Thank you, Syracuse, by the way. But yeah, I don't think Clemson's a lock to win the ACC, but I don't think they're a lock any year to win the ACC. I don't think any team in any Power 4 conference is a lock to win anything as far as conference championships go. There's too many variables. This is college football. Anything can happen on a given Saturday or Friday. Yes, I'm bitter about playing on a Friday still, but I think it'll be a good year. And they're certainly going to have competition, right? Those are the 5 teams that come to mind when you immediately think about contending for an ACC championship game this season. It's Clemson, Miami, SMU, Louisville, and Georgia Tech. Duke's another one out there that maybe is a little bit more of a long shot. Had a really good season last year. We'll see if Manny Diaz and company can kind of build upon that and maybe surprise some people this year. We'll see. But yeah, certainly far from a lock, but definitely should be the favorite. And I believe they should win the ACC.
Yeah.
But again, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Injuries, I mean, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and even the teams you mentioned, like Clemson plays all of them except for Miami.
Yeah. Right.
So
everybody but Miami. So, you got to go through all those, you got to go through 3 of the top 5 teams that are predicted to win the ACC this year. So, again, they will be tested.
absolutely.
All right, we'll go ahead and leave that there, guys. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We got 38 people in the live chat right now. That concludes the planned portion of our show. We're going to transition into answering some questions. But before we get to your guys' questions, go ahead and get them into the comment section and try to answer as many as we can. But before we get into that, follow us on all the social medias. Here's our X page right here, our Twitter page, the Voice of College Football Network official page for the best debate, discussion, and analysis with no off-season. This is where a bunch of college football content is posted. Our live schedules are posted on here, reminders about shows, schedule changes, all that stuff. So go ahead and give us a follow over there on X, and that would be greatly appreciated. We also have an Instagram page. Pull this up for you guys so you can see our Instagram page, one of our newer versions of our social media accounts. But go follow us over there on Instagram, the VOCFB. That's the VOCFB. Give us a follow over there on Instagram as we try to grow the audience over there as well. And with that said, guys, we're going to transition to a few questions, and then we will get out of here. I start a few, Jordan, as we went along tonight. I was trying to dual hat there and pay attention and try to make it happen. So let's see. Let's get into a couple questions. John Sarian, has Belichick ever grinned and laughed as much as he did with Dabo? Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird to see, actually.
Yeah, it was a little uncanny. And yeah, felt like you were watching a horror film. I'm kidding. But yeah, it was definitely different. You know, it was the most laid back and but like expressive I've seen him. Like, so that was interesting.
Joggington says, so far the top 2 commits are rated higher than the wide receivers by a wide gap. And this class of wide receivers ain't too shabby. No, they're not.
No.
Like I said, it's been a long time. I don't even know when. I can't name when. But when the 2 top recruits in the class were offensive linemen.
I don't know if that's ever happened under Dabo. I mean,
it might not have ever happened under Dabo. And especially them being this highly rated recruits.
Yeah, because even like the 5-star kids you got, the few 5-star kids you got at offensive line, they weren't the best player, like the highest rated in the class. Like when you think of
right.
like, Mitch Hyatt, I don't know. I don't think he was the number 1 player in the class. He might have been, but there wasn't another guy close to him. I know that. And then and Tristan Lee was a 5-star, but he wasn't the highest rated in that class.
No.
So like it says a lot.
Absolutely. Dylan Spell says, let's go. I got a Providence Day guy. It wasn't David Sanders, but got Leo Delaney, and hope it sticks. I got a good feeling it's going to stick.
Yeah. And I said it was a massive get, and it's just to get back into that school and get, a couple of guys that you really, really wanted after, because obviously the David Sanders situation was something that I think Clemson learned a lot from. And they made a really big effort to kind of correct, the wrongs there. And so it's been good. It's good to get back into the Charlotte area and that school, especially because they churn out a ton of talent.
They do. Jay says, Matt Luke, MVP. I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. He's a recruiting machine. Dylan Spell says, football season now. Sad to see basketball team fall out and the baseball team and then lose all the talent. Yeah, but again, like you started the comment with, it's football season now.
Yeah. It is officially football season.
Did Trevor Etienne reach Travis levels? No, not even close. Not even close. I think that was in the conversation we were talking about Max Brown.
Yeah. Well, maybe Trevor's career would have went different if
he went to the wrong schools.
Yeah. Plural
schools. Because he started out at Florida and then transferred to Georgia.
Yep.
Dylan Spell, is this the earliest of having a recruit commit for a later class?
No, I wouldn't. No, I mean, you've had guys commit, when offers come out in June before. Just off the top of my head, I wouldn't say he's the earliest. I don't think so. But I'd have to go back and look. Honestly.
Jay says it says even more, talking about Max Brown committing to the program. It says even more about the program when these younger siblings of Clemson players decide to commit to the school. It does say a lot about the program.
I mean, especially when you consider, I mean, in a lot of situations when you have a sibling, dynamic, like there's a lot, some kids just, they want to go be somewhere else just
Right.
because
They
they
want
don't.
to kind of carve their own path, if
Yeah.
you will. But it does show, that the program's genuine in the way that they go about things when you land as many siblings as Clemson does.
Yeah.
You think about the Woodaz brothers, right?
Mhm.
And now you got the excuse me, the Brown brothers on board, and
So the Lawsons.
yep, the Lawson brothers, yeah. So excuse me, they do it a lot. So
Of course, the Terrells.
yeah,
Yeah.
Terrell's, yeah. So that just to name a few, when you see it happen over and over again like that, in my mind, what it tells me is Clemson is a very genuine program, and they are what they say they are. Because otherwise, those older brothers would be like, "Hey, bro, don't come here, don't." So if you're not genuine and you're not developing players and you're not putting your players in the best position possible, you're not getting those siblings. So
100%.
John says gonna be some future comparisons about which is better, OL or DL. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, it's going to be nice to actually have a legitimate discussion. It's like, oh, man,
Right.
which trenches, which side of Clemson's trenches are better this year? Like that's never been a real discussion,
Hey,
ever.
I welcome that debate.
Yeah.
Jordan, we can gladly have that debate every single offseason. I'm all about it. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Ty Gwynn says, "Where did Luke come from?" Well, I guess before he was at Clemson, he was at home.
Yep.
But prior to that, he worked as he was the offensive line coach at Georgia, and then before that, I think the head coach at Ole Miss.
Yep.
And before that, he was the co-offensive coordinator and OL coach at Ole Miss. Then he got the head coaching job. Obviously, that didn't work out. He went to Georgia, and he was actually a part of their most recent national championship, 2022.
2021.
Right?
He retired after
He retired after 21. Okay, so he was a part of their 2021 national championship. Retired sort of abruptly, and then spent a couple of years out of football. And then Dabo Swinney called him up.
Yep.
And now he's at Clemson. So very good pedigree of putting offensive linemen in the NFL, both at Ole Miss and Georgia.
Yep.
David, our channel member, thank you so much for supporting the show and the channel in that way, David. Appreciate you. I expect the linebacker recruiting will make a jump starting next year, much like the O-line. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think you're already starting to see Clemson get out, kind of get ahead of things as far as linebacker is concerned. One of the big offers from the 2027 class that just came out, linebacker Caden Henderson. I think that's a guy that Clemson is going to be right there in the thick of it for, early on in his recruitment. So you're starting to see them get a head start. But yeah, I mean, I think Ben Boulware has been as active on the trail as anybody, and I think he's done a good job of with Tyler Atkinson. He's taken on the role about as well as you could ask, for a newbie coach, and he's been a grinder. Like it's just what he applies. That's what he was as a player, and he's applied that into how he coaches and how he recruits. So, and of course, having the backing of Tom Allen, it certainly helps a ton too. So, I do think you'll see. I think linebacker will be a big emphasis in next year's class, and we'll kind of see, what the numbers look like there. But this cycle, it's Tyler. We're all in on Tyler Atkinson. I want to see. You have a lot to sell him, and we'll see kind of what they, how that turns out, and where they pivot to if they don't end up getting his commitment. So, but yeah, I tend to think that we'll see Clemson really in on the linebacker market next cycle.
John Gitson says the Boulware visit to Atkinson's at school changed things big time. It would appear that it did. Yes.
Yeah, and
definitely got him back on campus.
Yeah. Getting him on campus for the elite retreat was, I think, was another big. It was a big step in that, like, you went from kind of just not being on the peripheral to being squarely, in contention. And then of course this past weekend, I think you only close the gap further. So I think Clemson is going to be right there. When he decides to make it, when it's time for him to make his decision later this summer. So,
yeah,
excited about
it. Matthew says, if we land Atkinson, that linebacker room with Brown and Atkinson will go crazy.
Yeah, I mean that would be special, man. I mean, a player of Tyler Atkinson's caliber at linebacker doesn't come around very often. That's why he's so highly sought after. And I think he's a guy that very easily could play as a true freshman. And then you couple that with the guys you still have in the room that have had a couple of years of development, the Drew Woodhazes and the CJ Kuba Taylors, and maybe you have a senior D Creighton and Jamal Anderson maybe that are ready to go. There's potential there.
Absolutely.
So.
Isaac Smith gets in and says, OL is slowly becoming the strength of our team, which will help us in the future since we won't likely be signing high caliber QBs anymore in the NIL landscape. You might be onto something there.
I mean, regardless of whether or not you're signing like the high, super high caliber rated quarterbacks, just having
you need that O-line. Yeah.
You need that O-line. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be important. Clemson has to be, like, especially in this era. You got to be. It's more important now than ever to be a holistically line of scrimmage program. Like, you can't be one or the other. You got to be good on both sides, and that's what you've seen from the last few national champions. Georgia was great on both lines of scrimmage. Michigan was great on both lines of scrimmage. Ohio State was great on both lines of scrimmage last year.
Yep.
Like, you need that. You can't the 2016 Clemsons aren't going to. You can't do that anymore. Where you have a okay to solid offensive line and really great receivers and an amazing quarterback and all that, but obviously your defense was great. Like, no, you got to be able to, especially in games where you're not hitting explosive plays and you're not just throwing the ball over the field. You got to be able to run the ball. You got to be able to impose your will in the line of scrimmage. You can't get beat, and that's where Clemson in their biggest games is where they've lost.
Yeah,
is
in the trenches. Yep,
in the trenches. So
yeah.
You can't be. And I think you're already. I mean, this past season I think was definitely a step forward. I felt like you were more physical than you'd been in some time, but there's still a lot of improvement that can be made. And with how much you have coming back, I'm excited to see what this group looks like in year two. So under Matt Luke. So.
It's amazing what a coach can do.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a coach can do. I thought that when we hired Matt Luke, that the O-line would certainly turn around and get better. I don't know that I saw it improving as quickly as it did, which, to your point, makes me even more excited about the 2025 version of that offensive line because they improved so much in year one. But yeah. Common denominator with the teams that compete at the highest level, look at the trenches. They have really, really good to elite level play in the trenches. Yeah. And that's how you win games consistently at the highest level. Intelligent Savage gets in and says, did you guys catch the Cade Klubnik interview on 3 during the Rose Bowl trip for the video game shot? I'm truly proud of Cade's growth and Dabo twice making the right call to switch QBs. Yes.
Yeah,
I did not see that interview. So
I don't know if I didn't see the whole interview. I did see a clip of it, and I think it was Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman's show on 3. They were they talked about one segment about who Cade has been modeling his game after, and who he's been watching. And he mentioned 2019 Joe Burrow, and he mentioned 2021 Bailey Zappi. So that was interesting.
there you go.
Yeah, but hey, Bailey Zappi, he has the NCAA record for most passing yards and touchdowns in a season. So
he does. He does.
He was phenomenal that year, and there was a brief stretch when he was starting for the Patriots where people thought, oh no, the Patriots found their guy again.
Yeah,
it ended up being the case, but
didn't work out. But nonetheless, speaking of Cade, Cade gave a promo for Clemson. Cade was praising Clemson for developing players. Yeah, absolutely. And he's a prime example of it. If you look at his first year starting, what did he have? 19 touchdowns and 9 interceptions.
Yep.
And then last year he had
on top of 7 fumbles.
On top of 7 fumbles and just basically a turnover machine in his first year starting. And then last year turned around and had 34 touchdowns and 4 interceptions.
36 touchdowns.
36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. There you go. Yep, 36 and 6. That's what it was. And a crap ton of yards, and then what he did with his legs as well. It was a complete 180. So yeah. But they better be good at development because that's what Dabo Swinney has hung his hat on for so many years. That he says it almost every time he gets an opportunity in an interview that they're a developmental program. So we should be seeing things like that. But yeah, it's good when players go out there and give the university some love and let people know that there's good player development there. Helps you on the recruiting trail.
Oh, yeah.
Mathis says, do y'all think we will finish with a top 5 class? No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But, I do think, you're well on pace to finish top 10. And honestly, regardless of the ranking, I mean, if you keep the guys in the class that you have right now, you land, the Bryce Perry Whites of the world and the Dre Quinns and, maybe you land a Carter Scruggs, and especially if you get a Tyler Atkinson, I think you're happy with that haul. Running back, we're still on seeing. That's one position I forgot to mention during the recruiting update. But Jay Lamar, I think Clemson did a good job with him. But that's a battle that it's going to be tough to stave off Georgia there. I'm hoping. It's good things. There were good things said after the visit, but beyond that, you just gotta you gotta hope you did enough because. But if you do land a guy like Jay Lamar, I mean that's a game changer for the outlook of your offensive class too, because he's the guy at this point. So who they pivot to if they don't land him is a little bit of a question.
Absolutely. All right, here's a good idea that we need to write down and do a little bit later. Intelligent Savage says, who are the top 5 to top 10 brother duos in Clemson Tiger history? That could be a fun list to put together.
Yeah, that could be fun. I mean, can I name a brother like that many 10 brother duos off the top? I mean, you think of the Perry brothers, I think are the obvious.
Yeah.
Or an obvious one, the Terrells.
Terrells, the Woodaz
is. But I mean, I don't know where you would. It would be hard to rank because there haven't been many situations where because you've had siblings, but it's rare when you get siblings and both of them are really good. So it's tough to there's 2 really obvious examples, and then beyond that, off the top of my head.
Yeah, the jury's still out on a couple of them, right? Woodeyes brothers, jury's still out on how good Drew is going to be at Clemson. Jury's still obviously out. Max Brown ain't even on campus yet. And Sammy Brown's barely got his career started at Clemson. So, jury's still out on those two duos.
Dylan mentions the Davis, but Judah and JD.
Oh, yeah.
And JD. Yeah. Who else?
The Lawson brothers, but jury's still out on Jaheim. So, we'll see.
It'd be tough. It'd be tough to. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a clear top two, and then you'd have to kind of, because with everybody else, it's okay. One player was really good, and then the other
player was like,
or either on the team and their career is still is they've yet to really break out, or they just they went through their career and they weren't like a standout player.
Right.
So the Venables brothers, I mean, both of them were starters.
Oh, yeah.
You could throw them. I think they'd have to be in that conversation. Who else?
I guess Sweeney brothers.
Yeah, but not.
They wouldn't be very high on the list, but they'd be on the list.
I guess they'd be on the list. Yeah, the Herb Streets too.
The Herb Streets. Yeah, they wouldn't be very high on the list, but they'd be on the list.
It's just hard to find guys that would play. Yeah, the Turners. Yeah, that would be, because both players have started. So I mean that's already a feather in the cap. And Nolan Turner was an All-American. People forget in 2020.
He was pretty good. Cole Turner still, seeing what his career ends up being, but
he's at least been a somewhat productive player.
Yeah, he's definitely going to get some burn this season too. Yeah. So I think they'll probably end up being one of the better duos out there.
Yeah, that might be something. I mean, we were just kind of spitballing names, but it'd be hard to rank them because like I said, there's like an obvious top two, and then you'd have to kind of parse through everybody else.
Yeah. Some of them you'd just be picking who was the better of the
of the good brother. Yeah.
All right. Intelligent Savage says the running back on visit this weekend. How well are we in position to land him?
I guess he's talking about Jay Lamar, who I mentioned.
You kind of already talked about him.
Yeah. Like I said, Georgia's going to be tough to beat there. Clemson, they've made him feel like a priority. That's about all you can do. So I heard some really positive things, read some really positive things, but at the end of the day, that's you gotta stave off. You gotta stave off Georgia there, and also in Miami is in that mix too. And if they decide to just turn this into a bidding war, then is what it is.
I don't know if you saw this interview, but Intelligent Savage says 2 Right Turns freshman edition. Whose welcome to college football or Clemson moment did you like the most?
Welcome to college. Was that something they went over? Because I'm not sure. I don't know if I saw that. Was that the episode? Who was on that episode?
That was with Gideon Davison. Who else? Who else was on there? Good Lord. My brain's not working.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I'd have to go and watch, so I can't answer that question.
Yeah, I didn't see the entire interview. But it was Gideon Davison, Easton Ware, and Amir Adams.
Okay.
So all three of those guys were on the Two Right Turns podcast. Is just kind of talking about the freshman class and what it's been. And I didn't get to watch all of it, but I think Gideon Davison was trying to remember his welcome to college football moment. I think he said it was against Jeremiah Alexander, and he just got kind of he tried to break one outside. I think he was talking about breaking one outside, and in high school you can just kind of outrun everybody, and that was not the case with Jeremiah Alexander. He got tore down on that one. And then Easton Ware, I think it was, he was talking about obviously going against the defensive line. Who was he talking about? Was his welcome to college football moment? I can't remember. I'd have to go back and watch it.
Was it Kate or I don't know? I would think I would hate for my welcome to. I was thinking about Kate. Like he'd probably be my least favorite. Him or Peter Woods on that defensive line. Like he'd be like that welcome to college football moment. I would not want to come to one of them.
Yeah,
because they're just so they're just pure power.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then again, Cape. It probably wasn't Cape because they held him out for a lot of the spring.
Yeah, no, it wasn't him. I remember that name. I can't remember exactly what because it was a certain play he was talking about where he kind of I think missed an assignment. But I can't remember. I'd have to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do a couple more and get on out of here because it's 11.
Yeah, Jacob, y'all must have started late tonight. Yes, we did start late. 9 o'clock is the new time slot for the show, though. We have moved it back an hour due to scheduling issues with my schedule. So we are back to the 9 o'clock time slot. That's the now permanent time slot for the show from now until the next time we have to change it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can stick with this for a while to build some consistency like we did in the 8 o'clock. Personally, I like the 8 o'clock time slot better.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, here we are. But yeah, we always start a few minutes past our scheduled time.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I think Dylan mentioned Balin and Brennan Spector. Yeah, that would be a good.
Yeah.
That would be a good pick.
As we dig into it, I feel like we're going to come up with a lot more names than we think we will.
Yeah. Both Spector brothers started at different points. I think Balin was certainly the better player, as a linebacker, but and they're one of the brother pairings that didn't play the same position, and they played on opposite sides of the ball. There's not a whole lot of those. I guess the Turners are the same, I guess, with Nolan and Cole. Nolan was obviously safety, Cole receiver. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Is Balin? I think Balin is still on. And is he? Who is he with now? Do you know if he's still on the roster? I think he is.
I think so.
He was. I mean, I know. Like last I remember him, he was with the Bills, and he was playing a good bit.
Yeah, he was as of last year. So unless he's been cut, he's still on the roster. Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, I can't do it from my phone without leaving the StreamYard.
Yeah, he's still with the Bills.
He's with the Bills?
Yep.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, he's still with the Bills.
And he was an underappreciated player while he was here.
Yeah, I mean he's carved out, a nice little role for himself with the Bills. So, I mean, still plugging right along. Will Mann gets in and says, "Hey, gentlemen, I just wanted to say hi. My name is Will. I really appreciate what you all do, and I stand firmly beside you. A true Tiger fan and a private scout." Well, thank you so much for showing up, man. If this is your first time in here, we appreciate you. Consider subscribing to the channel. We do this show, the All In Show, every Wednesday at 9 p.m. So hope you'll join us for another episode, and we appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else we got here. I'm gonna try to get one more, and then we'll get out of here. We'll go with this one just because it's funny. All right, Tiggs gets in and says, "Any commits from Clemson North this year?" No, I don't think so. But we did offer Matt Luke's son. So I'm sure those that like to beat the nepotism drum of Clemson fans had fun with that one.
Yeah. Shout out to Harrison Luke.
Shout out to Harrison Luke. His first Power 4 offer was Clemson University. So shout out to him. That's a big deal. I know we're Clemson fans and we're biased, but those Clemson offers are coveted. So that's pretty cool to get your first Power 4 offer as a Clemson offer. So
another fun little tidbit. This was first reported by Larry Williams over at Tiger Illustrated. Clemson's Clemson just added what? Oh man, now I just forgot who I was thinking of. A brother of an offensive lineman. He's a backup goalie for the soccer team. They just added him as a special teamer, and I'm blanking on his name. Was it? Oh God. Somebody in the comments will know. Somebody in the comments might know it, but it was this was just reported today. But the thinking is that he'll be a punter, but I can't think of his name right now. Brother of somebody of an offensive lineman on the team. He's a backup goalie for the soccer team, and they added him in a non-scholarship role as a specialist. So I don't know. Maybe he's the answer at punter. I don't know.
I can't find it, so somebody will know in the comments section. Tig says we need a punter ASAP. Yeah, we do. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and end the show there. Thank you so much for being here. We hit the 2-hour mark, and we are past 11 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and move on and let you guys go do better things like, I don't know, sleep and wake up for work that you possibly have tomorrow. I know me and Jordan do. But before we get out of here, 31 people in the live chat. If you have not already, please hit that like button for us. It really does help us out on these live videos. And if you've gotten this far, you might as well subscribe and come hang out with us every Wednesday, 9 p.m. for the All In Show. Me and Jordan will be right here every single Wednesday. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on X, whatever you want to call it. Follow Jordan first and foremost. I don't post that much over there, but Jordan is a great follow. So Jobo0209. Make sure you follow him. And you can follow me as well, TPC_CFB. I'd appreciate your follow as well. But until next time, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. You guys have a great rest of the week, and go Tigers.
Later, y'all.